Welcome to Extended Disc. In today's webinar, we want to provide some background for those of you who may not have met us yet. Extended Disc is an international assessment company with operations in almost 50 countries and 250 team members. Extended Disc offers internationally validated assessments that can be tailored to clients' unique needs and preferences. If you'd like to learn more, contact us on our website or follow us along any of our social media outlets. As a reminder, this webinar will be recorded and all registrants will receive a link to the recording, and it will also be posted on our YouTube channel. Use the Q&A section to ask us any questions you may have. If we are unable to answer them during our live session, we'll reach out to all registrants with the response. Thanks for joining us. And now here's the host of today's webinar.
Welcome, everybody. So glad to have you here with us today. Today is a webinar that is targeted for trainers and facilitators. It is a 30-minute webinar, and we're focused on what are the 4 steps to effective interactions and why does it make your DISC workshops more effective. We are living proof of it. So we're going to talk about how it makes our lives much easier and makes our DISC workshops more effective. My name is Christina Bowser. I'm the training director here at Extended DISC, and joining me is my wonderful colleague, Amy Lipinski, senior trainer. Hi, Amy.
Hi, Christina.
So let's talk a little bit about why the 4 steps were created. We have 2 purposes, 2 goals. Amy, you want to talk about them?
Yeah, I always enjoyed when I first began at Extended DISC because our 2 goals are to help you as our clients, as facilitators, coaches, instructional designers. And it's also our second goal is to really help your clients. And our 4 steps are going to be founded on helping you achieve these 2 goals. So I think back to previous roles I had before joining with Extended DISC, and I was certified in different behavioral assessment tools, and I was an instructional designer and a facilitator. And I was telling Christina, I think there was about 2 years within my career where I just redesigned DISC, whether it be for virtual, for leaders, for team development. It seemed like that's all I was doing was literally redesigning and rethinking about DISC in different aspects or different kind of modules. And when I joined with Extended DISC, it was so refreshing because our foundation to the 4 steps of effective interactions really becomes that template, and you don't have to recreate the wheel over and over and over and over again. And so it's really designed to help your lives be easier. You don't have to think through the most difficult aspect. I always thought as a facilitator and instructional designer was, how do I apply this, right? How do I get my participants to leave my workshop and apply what I've taught them? And our 4 steps help you to that avenue, right? It gives them opportunities to practice. And that's why these 4 steps can really kind of take you to the top of your game in your workshops and really add that extra value, because it's going to walk you through that awareness to application. It's going to give them opportunities to practice. We have tons of resources available that we're going to talk about in a little bit, right? You don't ever have to recreate the wheel because we have recreated it over and over in different modules, different ways, different aspects for you. So our job is to make your life easier and help you bring success to your clients and to help our clients as well achieve that success.
Yeah, and I think for someone like Amy, it was an eye-opener. I had just assumed that everybody trained the same way we did, regardless of what types of behavioral assessments you use. I mean, why would you want to make your life harder, right? So my mandate always to the facilitators and anything that we develop is it can't make our clients' lives harder. It has to make it easier, because what we know is you guys wear a lot of hats. And for me at Extended Disc is all I do. But even then, having these 4 steps as my template is a reset for myself. Just like many of you guys are not trained in probably just disc. You probably are, use a lot of different tools, whether it's behavioral tools or otherwise. And the more you know about DISC, sometimes the more we want to impart that information and share it with our participants and our clients. But sometimes there is such a thing as too much, right? So it's a good way to reset yourself and really come back to what is it my participants, my DISC workshop learners really need to get them started on DISC. And that's the reason why we do it. So let us start with the 4 steps to effective interactions. And some of you, if you have attended any of our workshops, there's a good chance we have said this out loud. We're not going to go into the deep dive into it today. We're going to talk about the power of it rather than what it actually is and how to apply it. We use these 4 steps into, as you heard Amy say, everything that we do. And you can see here we have understanding the 4 main behavioral styles. So obviously the first thing we do when we are debriefing reports and we're doing DISC workshops, everybody has to be on the same page, meaning that when we describe a D style or an I style or an S style, C style, we all need to know what that means. And as you guys may or may not be aware, there are many DISC assessment tools out there, and they don't always measure the same thing. But at step 1 is where we are all the same. How we describe DISC is based on a universal model. Let's go on to step 2.
And step 2 is really that assessment tool, right? And at Extended DISC, we use it as a tool to help individuals understand, raise their own self-awareness, but also how other people perceive someone with that DISC style. So sometimes it's able to illuminate some blind spots that we may have, right? Because it's also how other people may view our DISC style, and we might not be aware of how people are viewing us or seeing us. So it gives us some additional insights into how others see someone with our DISC style, as well as just kind of our own self-awareness, how we tend to show up.
Yeah, I really say that the gap between where we are seeing ourselves and where we think we show up versus how we are actually being observed by other people, we call these your blind spots. And we have found that blind spots give you and your clients the greatest opportunity for your development. The next step is really, we find that a lot of behavioral assessment tools, primarily DISC tools, and actually any behavioral assessment tools, do a great job on step 1, identifying different types and styles, and also on step 2. Where DISC becomes a very powerful tool is, number 1, its simplicity, but that it moves on to step 3. It's one thing to understand a lot about yourself, to have that situational awareness of how you tend to show up, how you tend to come across to others. But DISC is a simple enough tool that it helps you better understand other people. How do they prefer to communicate with you? It's as simple as, do I think this person is more of a D style or an I style or an S style or C style? So being able to at least get off to a start by identifying what you believe their main DISC style is, now you have more information to make decisions on how to interact with that person.
And step 4 is what I always say, the whole reason we take the assessment, right? When you start a DISC workshop, you have that benefit of everybody being excited to be there. People love DISC. People love to learn about themselves, talk about themselves, right? But the power of the tool is in the consistent application. And so in steps 3 and 4 is where we've already built in that application. And we talk about how we can adjust our style to achieve goals, to better the interaction. We're not trying to change you. We're not saying you're broken. You don't need to be fixed. You're fine whoever you are. We want you to embrace who you are, own your behaviors, and understand the strategy behind temporary brief adjustments that you can make to help with that interaction. And what's the cost if you don't, right? What's the cost to the team, to that relationship, to the project, to the organization? So thinking through the cost if you don't make that adjustment, because we always joke, right? You can't change and control another person. We've all tried, but the only thing we can change and control is ourselves. So if you want a different response, try adjusting our style and adjusting it temporarily. Like I said, it doesn't have to be big, long adjustments, right? They're temporary and brief adjustments to help us improve that relationship, that interaction with that other person.
Right. And think about it. When you are doing these types of workshops, communication workshops, any type of behavioral tool assessment workshops, it's typically a positive experience for your participants. You already have a leg up because it's not about rules and regulations and that kind of dry stuff that people kind of dread going, but they go. But this is a workshop where I get to talk about myself, so it already becomes a positive experience. What we don't want happening is that it stays a positive experience and only a positive experience. The power of these 4 steps is there is this application, as you heard Amy talk about it, that's built into these 4 steps. So what we as trainers need to be consciously aware of when we're preparing our curriculum is how do we incorporate their real life experience into the learning process. And the more that you are able to do that, the more likely that they are going to be using DISC when they leave the session. They're going to leave the session pretty positive no matter what, but we want the application piece because we know that when we go back to our office and the phones are ringing and we've had deadlines, as much as we value what we learn, sometimes it gets pushed aside. But if we already start them on that path in the learning experience itself, better chance of success for them.
Yeah, we don't want the sessions only to be just theory of DISC, but we want to have that application, make it real world, right? Tangible. So we have a lot of exercises to help you do that. And there are going to be specific exercises that walk you through all 4 steps. There are some exercises that we do at just certain, maybe step 1, step 2, or step 3, or step 4. We have so many different exercises for teams, for groups, right? So today, because we're talking about the 4 steps, we're going to focus in on 2 exercises that really walk you through all 4 steps and have a lot of value when used in a session. And I was telling Christina, I don't think I've ever facilitated a session where I haven't done at least those 2 exercises. They become the foundation of what I do. So the first one is called How Do I Relate? And this one is one that we are going to actually do in our webinar today. So I want you all to think about someone that you interact with at work. Kind of steer away from family or friends, but think about coworkers, maybe clients, people that you interact with at the workplace, and map an individual to each of our 4 quadrants. So think about somebody who fits our D style, I, S, C styles. Jot their names down, have them in your head. Once you have those 4 names, look at the list of names and which of those individuals do you find it easy to talk with, right? And what specifically is it that makes it easy? And what I want you to do is just type it into chat. What style was that person that you find it easiest to interact with, to communicate with? And if you have the opportunity to put into chat, give us a shout out too. And what is it specifically that makes it easy? The second piece, as you're thinking through all of that, is to think about who is most challenging and what makes it challenging. Again, there's no right or wrong answers to these. I get different responses all the time, right? Sometimes people say styles that are like mine are easy. Sometimes they say styles that are opposite from mine are easy. It's really setting us through that stage of one, recognizing, right, understanding how people are similar and different. We're understanding a little bit about our own self. It's setting that kind of idea around, okay, this person, this is what makes it easy, right? It's giving us that insight into our own awareness around what makes it easy or what makes it challenging. We're practicing identifying the styles. And then the last piece is really about what can you do now to adjust, right? Once you've gone through all of the information within the workshop, how do you adjust to that style? What are some of the things or tips that you can do to adjust? Sometimes we get, this D style is easy, but this other person who's a D is really challenging. There's no right or wrong. It's again that specific reason why that's going to help us with that awareness, right? Now we have awareness and we can plan for it. So what are you seeing come into the chat there, Christina?
Well, I always say the challenging ones are the ones where you might be rolling your eyes when they send you an email, or like you're in a conversation with them and you're like, oh, like I have no idea what this person is trying to tell me. New team members are hard to read, and that is absolutely true. People that you don't know can be very challenging to read. But one of the 3 steps, step 3, which is identifying the style of others, is actually a 3-step process that we teach our clients. It's called observe, assess, and recognize. And one of the things that I forgot to mention, so thank you for bringing that up, is that we have a lot of these videos, and we also have live webinars coming up that specifically address each of the steps in detail. So you can go to our extendeddisc.org website to learn more about how to identify the disc styles of others. It's also built into your report, which we'll talk about. Some of the comments that I'm seeing is, let's see, former coworker, easy, because we talk about the bottom line, get to the point. So you share similar styles. Somebody said S style, willing and interactive, one-on-one. Challenging, those that are hard to reach, easily distracted, non-committal. Now, what's interesting, and I love that, what challenges you is a perception, right? Sometimes we see someone as easily distracted, but that person may see themselves as, oh, next thing, on to the next thing, something's better is coming along. And they may not see themselves as easily distracted. So again, it's the awareness piece. D's, I would say someone said D's. D's are, I'm not gonna lie, D's are challenging for me. They're the ones that make me go, or like before you have to pick up the phone and call them, you gotta take that deep breath, psych yourself up. So we all have different styles that challenge us. At flexing, somebody said we need to be, to consider it if they are style flexing. What would you say about that, Amy? If they're trying to adjust to us?
Well, we can't expect other people to always adjust to us, right? If they're adjusting, sometimes that might kind of throw off, we're looking for observing patterns of behavior, right? So sometimes it's harder when they're making an adjustment, but typically when it's an adjustment, it won't be a pattern of behavior then. We're only going to see it occasionally or maybe once in a while. So when we think about that identifying their style, like Christina said, through that OR acronym, we're observing patterns of behavior to help us really determine that. And I always joke that sometimes, if I'm trying to flex to an I style, they won't think that I'm really super I. They're going to be like, really? Like, that's you trying to be I? But in my world, it's like, oh my gosh, like, this is look at my bright color. This is me being crazy and wild, right? Like, so sometimes those flexing, like people might miss some of those cues unless they really do know us well. I love some of the comments that even though I'm an I, sometimes they're difficult because they bounce all over the place. And it's interesting because I always describe our I's as more of the extroverted thinkers, right? They're going to not process it before they speak. They're going to process it as they speak. So sometimes it appears like they're the ping pong match and bouncing all around because they're processing all of their thoughts as they speak.
And remember, even though and Amy hit it, like, I've done so many trainings where like a person will raise their hand, they're like, I don't agree with my results. I'm a total D. And then we're going through the training and, one of the things they'll say is, I don't like confrontation. And I'm like, I don't say it out loud, right? But I'm like, do you hear yourself? It's like, you cannot escape your style is basically what we say. You may perceive yourself, like Amy says, as being more talkative, but people who truly are that style, or people will recognize, like, you might be friendly, but maybe you're a calmer friendly. Maybe you're more direct friendly. We're all friendly, right? We're all helpful. We're all competitive, but our style shows through, even in those behaviors.
Yeah. So the other exercise I wanted to talk about real quick was just one that we call my communication strategy worksheet. And what I love about this is it's an easy to do worksheet. I like to time people how long it takes them to complete it, because I know that's always the number one obstacle, right? I don't have time. There's no time to really do this. And what you'll find is it takes about 3 to 5 minutes to complete. And that's the first time you're looking at it. The more you do it, the easier it's going to be, and it becomes a habit, right? And the more we can do this and the more habit we build in it, the more luck and more opportunities we'll have for that consistent application of it. So it walks you through planning an upcoming conversation. Who are you going to be interacting with? It walks you through and provides a visual to help you identify what you think their main disc style will be. It has you write down your disc style, and then it has a place for you to create your strategy, your top 3 do's, don'ts, and continue to do's with that individual. And I always say you don't have to reinvent the wheel again, right? Use your individual assessment, because starting in the back of there, it's going to give you tips of what to do or not to do with individuals. So look at your individual assessment to help you create that strategy. What do you think will work best for this individual person that you're going to be interacting with? The more you can fill out that worksheet, the more it will just become a habit, and you will have a strategy in place even when you haven't prepared for an upcoming conversation, because odds are you'll meet someone similar to that style, and you'll have that strategy in place and be ready to go.
And most importantly, whether you are aware or your clients are aware of it or not, these exercises are taking them through the 4 steps, getting to that application piece. And I commend all of you for, there's a lot of chats, Amy. I unfortunately can't read them all, but I am reading them all, just not live. But the fact that you guys are aware, the fact that you own your style and you are aware of how a style is for you, whether they're a challenge or whether they're easy, you are far ahead of the rest. And that's one of the things we're trying to get our own clients to do. The next one I want to talk about is the self-development guide. And if you are lucky enough to get one of these, it's a good, I call this essentially my Bible. Now, do you have to have it? Of course not. But it's the 4 steps to effective interactions. And it's great because you heard me say that sometimes I need to reground myself because I have all this wealth of information that I want to share with participants. But participants don't need to be overwhelmed. So it is a good way to remind me what those 4 steps are and to kind of reset myself, simplify everything so that when people are hearing about DISC for the first time, it's functional, it's usable, and they can get started right away.
Sorry,
Yes.
Respond to chat.
Yes, the guide has been updated. It is, if you have the old one, it's okay. It's essentially the same. Some of the pictures and a few of the names are updated, but for the most part, it's the same.
So the facilitator guides, and I know that was a question in our Q&A as well. And there is a facilitator guide, not for this webinar, but for our 4 steps to effective interactions. And our facilitator guide will include some of those exercises that we've talked about. It has the PowerPoint. It'll walk you through all 4 of those steps and how you can facilitate to a group of people for that. You can do either a half-day session, a full-day session. There's also links to references. So if you wanted a refresh on how to talk about the different profile types or how do I read the profiles. There's going to be different links to some additional resource information if you needed some refreshers on that as well.
And the thing about the facilitator guide is it's really designed for someone who really has never done a DISC training before. It's like helping you from ground zero, really kind of walks you through everything. The PowerPoints, we have new PowerPoints that some of you may or may not be aware of. PowerPoints we have for 2 to 4 hours, which is just a template. Again, it's based on the 4 steps. It takes you through all 4 steps. You can edit it. We design it for you as a template. We also recently have we've broken it down into 4 30-minute sessions. So some of us, you're doing it virtually. You're doing it as part of, a sales training or a regular monthly meeting. Instead of doing a whole DISC workshop, you can break it into 4 sections and focus on 30 minutes per session. So we've done it that way. We've also added it so you can do it virtually or in person. All of these that Amy's talking about, the facilitator's guide, as well as the PowerPoints and handouts and exercises, are all available on our client resource site. So as long as you are an active user of extended DISC assessments, you have access to all of these resources other than the self-development guide for any additional costs. There's no additional costs as long as you are an active user.
And if you have an older facilitator guide, the 4 steps have remained the same. There's nothing really that has changed from that. The client resource site might just have some additional exercises. So there's no additional, I don't think the facilitator guide's been updated in any particular way, because our updates typically bring in onto that client resource site some additional, maybe different PowerPoints. These are foundational materials, right? They're designed to be that template. Which we're actually getting to. So before I jump the gun on that, let me talk about the last item on our list here, the assessment. Have any of you ever noticed that our assessments themselves follow the 4 steps to effective interaction? So even if you don't have or use any of these additional resources, you can simply use the assessment, the report itself, and follow those 4 steps. So it is going to walk you through an overview of our DISC styles. It's going to walk you through the individual's results, raising their awareness about motivators, demotivators, strengths. And then it's going to talk about how to identify the DISC style of others. And like Christina mentioned, that OR process, observe, assess, recognize, that's all in there in the assessment tool itself. And then we move into step 4. How to adjust, those tips, the do's and don'ts that I mentioned. That's really step 4. That's what it's all about. So our assessment tools themselves, the reports, all follow those 4 steps to effective interactions.
All right, and then finally, just to wrap up, these are just some examples of DISC workshops that we have. When we think about leadership, we think about there's a broad range, right? There's somebody had mentioned an executive board versus high potentials, identifying high potentials, working with teams, intact teams, dysfunctional teams, groups in general, customer service, and then not just on the pairing or the group of the role, but actually talking about things like negotiation and stress and time management. Go back to those 4 steps. Go back to the fundamentals, ground yourself, because even though you may not be hearing about DISC for the first time, there's a good chance that your participants are hearing it for the first time. So it's critical that we capture them and that they hear us and understand how to apply it in a way that is simple and easy to attain. Because as we know, life is complicated enough. Any last thoughts, Amy, that you would add?
I always just say, if there's something you're specifically looking for, reach out. We love to hear from our clients, hear what's working, what they like. It also gives us great ideas on what types of resources to develop next. But There's definitely lots of resources. And from my C-style perspective, I love that redundancy. There's a foundation to it that I can follow that makes it easy. So hopefully it makes it easy for all of you as well.
There was just one last question about webinars and different assessments. Just reach out to us. We have some information on that, and we will definitely put that on our idea list for future webinars. Thank you guys all for joining us. You guys were awesome. We do have a webinar coming up next week, I think. I've lost track of my days. It's step 1 of the 4 steps to effective communication. What is DIS&C? And we run these 4 session workshops on each of the steps once a month. So if you miss one, it's going to come around again. Thank you all again. You guys have an awesome rest of your day.